Hello everyone, my name is Paul Third, and this week on Mixing Wednesdays I am going to be looking into the new smart limiter from SONIBLE. We all know how much I love SONIBLE. I love their smart EQ, and I can't wait to try out their smart reverb in the new year. I do trust SONIBLE, I do love what they do, and this week I'm going to be comparing it versus not one, not two, but three different limiters. One shootout from me and another shootout at the very end from an actual mastering engineer as well. In a nutshell, Smart Limit is a intuitive smart AI plugin. All you've got to do is set your genre and your streaming platform, let it listen to the loudest part of your track, let it do its thing, and hopefully if it does its thing right, then you should have a very transparent, open and loud sounding master. You can add saturation, which we will test out later in the video. I'll compare saturated versus clean, and I've also got some aliasing tests for you as well. You can add some spectral balancing in, so if you feel that after the limit and you're maybe feeling that the track's maybe a little bit too harsh, you can add just a little bit of the smart EQ in there and do some spectral balancing, which, if doing its job right, should hopefully just take out any of the harshness that you need it to do. And then lastly, you've got a bass control where you can refine your low end. So lots and lots of great options to get your teeth into. Now for this video, what I'm going to do in terms of my shootout, so what you're going to hear now is the first shootout, which is a channel mix that I've been working on. Finished it, I'm happy with it, I've been experimenting and playing about. I was like, right, okay, let's treat this as if I was sending this mix away to a client, as if this band was the client and I wanted to get my mix more to a commercial kind of reference loudness. Now what I've done for this mix is I have decided to go in at around like the -10 LUFS mark. I'm not going to get into the whole loudness wars thing, I'm just not going to get into it. But for my shootout, it's going to be -10 LUFS, which I think is plenty level referencing for me. In the SONIBLE, I'm using an indie rock preset, which is great for the SONIBLE. You can just pick a few presets. Indie rock did its thing, and I quite like the sound of it. And I'm comparing that versus the BX True Peak and also the Waves L1. All of them are level matched. They're all the same integral LUFS. Now, to make this shootout a little bit easier in terms of like comparing each side by side, I've broken the song down in segments so you could hear the comparisons at one short piece at a time, so they're all playing the exact same piece over the length of the song. Then after that, what we'll do is we'll have a little bit of a recap, and then we'll go into testing the saturation and the aliasing, and we will then compare what SONIBLE AI Smart Limit sounds like clean compared to saturated, and whether the saturation maybe needs a bit of refinement, or if you should possibly be using the smart limiter clean. Let's do it.
Honey, I've gone all out and I've been broken in. When it pours on me, I can soak it all in. Honey, I've gone all out and I've been broken in. When it pours on me, I can soak it all in. Honey, I've gone all out and I've been broken in. When it pours on me, I can soak it all in. I'm alive, and my blood is pumping like a gaslight. Got an edge I'm holding, got an edge I'm holding. I'm alive, and my blood is pumping like a gaslight. Got an edge I'm holding, got an edge I'm holding. I'm alive, and my blood is pumping like a gaslight. Got an edge I'm holding, got an edge I'm holding. I got a rugged heart, I got a body made them sharp, like a pocket knife. I got a rugged heart, I got a body made of blade, so I'm gonna keep them sharp, like a pocket knife. I got a rugged heart, I got a body made of blade, so I'm gonna keep them sharp, like a pocket knife. Honey, I'm all bruised up from the places I've been, from the time I fell, from all the struggling. Honey, I'm all bruised up from the places I've been, from the time I fell, from all the struggling. Honey, I'm all bruised up from the places I've been, from the time I fell, from all the struggling. Like a pocket line. I got a rugged heart, I got a body made of blade, so I'm gonna keep them sharp, like a pocket knife, like a pocket line. I got a rugged heart, I got a body made of blade, so I'm gonna keep them sharp, like a pocket knife, like a pocket line. I got a rugged heart, I got a body made of blade, so I'm gonna keep them sharp, like a pocket knife.
Now, for anybody asking, Paul, where is FabFilter Pro L2? I don't have Pro L2, but the mastering engineer that I use quite a lot, he has Pro L2. And if you stick around till the end of the video, we are going to have a small jazz piece. And what he has done is he's got Pro L2, the BX True Peak as well. And he's got the SONIBLE SMART LIMIT, and he used it in a jazz preset, and he's hitting around minus 13 LUFS. So you've got my shootout at minus 10 LUFS, and you've got his shootout at minus 13 LUFS. And then there's one more shootout, and I'll speak about that at the very, very, very end of the video. Now, before we do all our aliasing tests, first I want to speak very quickly about what we heard there in the shootouts, and just my opinions. It is absolutely subjective, as always, okay? There is no wrong or right answers. In my opinion, I genuinely do prefer the SONIBLE Smart Limit. Now, I'll tell you why. The reason that I prefer SONIBLE Smart Limit is, well, all right, okay, first off, right, the Waves L1 sounds rubbish, right? It can't handle its own arse, right? It just completely falls apart. It sounds pumpy, it sounds a little bit distorted, it just doesn't sound nice. It just cannot handle that level of limiting, right? Like minus 10 LUFS. It just cannot handle that level of limiting. It's got its place, L1, but it doesn't sound good pushed. It's not an ideal limiter for mastering, or especially if you're going to be mixing through it, or you want to kind of get your track to a certain level to then send to a client. You definitely don't want to be using Waves L1. I think that's pretty clear, which to me leaves us with two possible options: the Brainworks True Peak and the SONIBLE Smart Limit. In my personal subjective opinion, I really do prefer the SONIBLE over the Brainworks. Now, the reason I really prefer the SONIBLE is because it's, one, it sounds more natural to me, and two, most importantly, it's all about the width for me. What the BX True Peak does, it kind of narrows the stereo field a little bit, and it's almost like it prioritizes the punch, because it's been marketed as a very kind of punchy limiter, and it is quite a punchy limiter. You can hear it in the low end, it's got a little bit of thump in there. But I think it kind of over-prioritizes the transients a little bit, which then kind of means that the rest of the track is kind of brought down. And it kind of, the rest of the track kind of like hides a little bit, which means that to me it narrows the entire mix. Now, I did purposely stick the saturation on this, so it ties very, very nicely into what we're going to do next. But in terms of the saturation and the overall sound of it, I do like the stereo width. I do feel it's natural and it's limiting. In comparison to the rest, it definitely keeps that stereo image 100%. However, as much as I do prefer the SONIBLE Smart Limit over the BX True Peak, and it's just my opinion, can that sound be improved that I got there? Can the SONIBLE Smart Limit sound even better? Yes, it can, again, in my opinion. So let's talk about the saturation function. Now, there's been a lot of videos on Smart Limit already, and nearly all of them are using the saturation, because in the little dial, little box, help box, it tells you more saturation, and it helps to create kind of more perceived loudness, and the limiter's not having to work as hard. Now, for me, I would definitely mix through the SONIBLE SMART LIMIT 100%, or use it to kind of periodically check like how my mix is sounding if it was like heavily limited. And the problem that I have with this technique is that if I was to use it in a 48K session, using the saturation functions, there is going to be a lot of audible aliasing, even just like 5%, 10%, and going up to 15%, 30%, it starts to get really audible. Now, as you can see, there it is at 10K, right? So again, at 10K, it's making audible aliasing. Move it up to 15K, it's making even more audible aliasing. Now, when it comes to a final mix, right, obviously, we all know my opinions on aliasing. I'll leave a link to the aliasing videos that I've done. I've done videos on how to test for aliasing, as well as the realities of aliasing as well. I've done lots of tests on what it sounds like, etc., etc. In my opinion, the last thing you want to do, and I don't personally would think that a mastering engineer would stick aliasing on an overall mix, over an entire mix, right? Think about it. There are obviously going to be high frequencies, right? Now, if you're saturating an entire mix and you have all these high frequencies, and then you add saturation on top of that, and there is no oversampling, then that is going to create aliasing, because there are high order harmonics being made past Nyquist. If you don't know what I'm talking about, check out the video. As you can see, there is quite a lot of audible aliasing being brought in by the saturation function. There needs to be an oversampling option. There needs to be. In my opinion, if you're a mastering engineer or you're using this to send to your clients, the last thing you want to do is stick aliasing over your mix. Now, if you do not use the saturation whatsoever, it's completely clean, which is great. Completely clean. Clean as an absolute whistle. Now, as I said, this is still all completely subjective, right? And to test that subjectivity, what I've decided to do is I've decided to take the limiting using the saturation of the indie rock setting, and then compare that to the exact same indie rock setting, but with the saturation off, a little bit of spectral balancing, because I do hear a little bit of like top end harshness a little bit. It's like limiting the overall record, maybe makes it a little bit harsher. A little bit of spectral balancing in there to kind of flatten it out and make it a little bit less harsh. And then I've used the low end control, just a little bit. You're talking like 10% in both. Just very, very minute little tweaks. So let's get into the penultimate shootout of this video. Smart limit with saturation, smart limit clean with a bit of the extra functions as well, and I'll throw in the BX True Peak as well. Let's see how we go on.
Like a pocket line. I got a rugged heart. I got a body made of blade, so I'm gonna keep them sharp. Like a pocket knife. Like a pocket line. I got a rugged heart. I got a body made of blade, so I'm gonna keep them sharp. Like a pocket knife. Like a pocket line. I got a rugged heart. I got a body made of blade, so I'm gonna keep them sharp. Like a pocket knife. Like a pocket line. I got a rugged heart. I got a body made of blade, so I'm gonna keep them sharp. Like a pocket knife. Like a pocket line. I got a rugged heart. I got a body made of blade, so I'm gonna keep them sharp. Like a pocket knife. Like a pocket line. I got a rugged heart. I got a body made of blade, so I'm gonna keep them sharp. Like a pocket knife.
Okay, so hopefully, right, again, it is all subjective. Hopefully what you can hear is that the clean sounds fucking way, way, way better than the saturated, in my humble opinion. Obviously, the saturation is adding colour. It's making it sound a little bit dark. However, I could hear the mud that the aliasing's adding, right? I know what aliasing sounds like, and in my opinion, that's aliasing that I'm hearing. That kind of lack of definition that you hear in the toms, there just kind of seems like it's not as open. The clean is very, very open, and it almost kind of adds a little bit more width back. Sometimes aliasing can do that, can narrow the stereo image. To me, you've got a wider stereo image with it clean, and in my opinion, the spectral balancing has done a great job at just taking out any of the harshness from the limiting, and also the low end is more akin to the BX True Peak as well. In my opinion, if you're going to use this plugin at 48K, my suggestion would be try it clean first, right? I know it's tempting to use the saturation, but unless you are at 96K or like 192K, I would suggest possibly doing it clean first, then maybe add in the saturation, level matching them, creating two files, play the two of them side by side so you can hear the difference from yourself. The saturation still has its own sound, right? It has its own sound, it's just that it should not be aliasing, right? If you're mastering or you're using this like to send to your clients, you should not be adding aliasing over the entire mix, in my opinion. It is completely subjective. In my personal opinion, the clean sounds way, way, way better. And I think it sounds awesome. It's open and sounds great. I love the fact that it's just fucking a click of a button, 10 seconds, and it's like, it's done. Simple. So unbelievably simple. Now, for all of you moaners, I have added all 4 files to SimCloud. All the WAVs have went directly to SimCloud. Fuck it. Honestly, if you're going to moan about SimCloud as well, then fuck it, just get off my channel, right? Fuck off, right? Fuck off. But I've uploaded them to SimCloud as well, so you have another reference to listen to as well. So, there we go. There's my shootouts done. Hopefully you've enjoyed them. We're not finished yet, because I am going to let you have one last shootout, right? Because I did think that many people, because I am hated and I'm despised in many audio engineering circles because I'm not a working engineer. It doesn't matter if I've got an audio degree. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter, right? I get slated. I did get an actual working mastering engineer to have a play about and kind of give me files and kind of give me his humble opinion, right? So what you're going to hear now is a FabFilter Pro L2, because everybody's been talking about that. The BX True Peak, which he does own, but he doesn't use much. And also the Smart Limit. And what he's done is he's taken those 3 limiters, he's set them the way that he would use them. In a nutshell, if this was the only limiter that he had to use, this is how he would use it. So he's got the FabFilter set the way he's going to set it, he's got the BX True Peak set the way he would set it, and he also has the Smart Limit set the way that he would use it. He used the Jazz preset. It's all at -13 LUFS. It's a different sounding track. So before it's like a dense, like indie rock track, and this is a very open, like jazz instrumental track. He prefers the Smart Limit. So there you go. A mastering engineer also prefers the Smart Limit. It's all subjective, again, at the end of the day. And if that's not good enough, I have got another mastering engineer, and this specific mastering engineer masters like up to like 150 tracks a year, millions and millions and millions of streams on Spotify. He's essentially took a loop of like a dancey kind of like drum and bass kind of thing, and he's given me all 10 files, 10 different limiters. I'll stick it here, right? So if you watch the shootout that's coming next, then you can watch that. Again, short pieces, and there's no talking, it's just one after the other. 10 limiters, all set individually, right? None of these are matched settings. They have all been used by the mastering engineer the way that he would genuinely use them if this was all that he had. So you can realistically hear in a realistic environment the differences between each. Again, it is all subjective, but I can't give you any more. I've done the best I can do, and I'm not a mastering engineer, right? I've given you a mastering engineer shootout, and then I've given you another mastering engineer shootout. That's the best I can do. And if that's good enough for you, then please, just like the video, eh? Like the video, right? Like the video. I put a lot of effort and time into these videos, so a like would help me massively. And if you've not subscribed, subscribe, check out the other video that is coming out today. It's the Pimax. I think it's super cheap, and I would say it is better than a Sonic's inflator. Much, much cheaper, and sounds awesome. So check that out as well. My name's Paul Third. Hopefully you've liked the video. Let me know your comments down below, what you think and what limiters you use, and I'll see you next week.